With a name like Antarctic Mike, you know you're in for something different. Mike grew up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and was always a renegade. He never wanted to work for anyone, but always wanted to do it his way. He ran before he walked, and everything was fast and loud. His poor parents, right? At age 12, he learned that the day starts at 4 a.m., delivering morning newspapers. What time do you think he got up today? He gets up at 4 a.m., which is the single best habit he has ever set for himself. He always takes the road nobody has traveled. On a good day, he looks like an unmade bed whose clothes came from the thrift store and are stored in the trunk of the car. True story. He can't even match his shoes, or maybe he just doesn't want to. I feel like I need a nap just reading your intro. Tomorrow he'll be gone, a million miles from home. The only road he knows leads out of town, and he spends 150 to 175 days a year living like a gypsy, doing what he does best, telling life-changing stories that inspire people to change theirs. Buckle your seatbelts, because this will not be a session you're expecting or one you've ever heard before, but one that has the horsepower to transform your employees, your customers, your reputation, your family, and your own legacy. Coming today from San Diego, please welcome Antarctic Mike.
February 13th, 1985, Durango, Colorado. 2 years before I met her, my wife, Angela, fell off a mountain 150 feet, breaking nearly every bone in her body. That's why I went to Antarctica. I'll explain. It all started in August of 2001 when a random visit to a bookstore, they used to make these things called bookstores, some of you remember these days. A random visit to a bookstore changed everything. I walked in and I saw this photograph on the cover of this book titled Shackleton's Way. I knew nothing of the story. I had never heard of this character named Shackleton, so I was curious and I picked it up. I spent 10 minutes in that book. And within that 10-minute period, I got it. Okay, what did I get? Simply this. Ernest Shackleton in 1914 hired 27 people. The plan was to sail from England to Antarctica. And a small group of the 28 would attempt to cross the entire continent on foot. Something nobody had ever done. Well, things don't always go as planned, do they? In their case, they didn't plan on the ship getting stuck in the ice. They certainly didn't plan on the ship being crushed and splintered into a million pieces. They didn't plan on being stranded for 2 years. And of course, nobody expected them to all come home alive. But that is exactly what happened. And this story captivated me as I stood in the aisle of the bookstore on that random day in August of 2001. And I thought the amount of lessons for the real world have to be endless. I'll give you one of them. I'm going back to when the ship was stuck in the ice. Now, at this point, there were only less than 100 miles from Antarctica, pretty close. And of course, when the ship gets stuck in the ice, they tried to free the ship, which of course was in vain. So Shackleton made a decision, a brilliant decision as a leader. He said, let the ship go. Let it go. We have no control over the ship. Let's focus in on the game. And I thought, you know what? Metaphorically speaking, that ship represents everything in your life you have no control over. Other people's decisions. What is the decision is the president going to make? What about COVID? I mean, it's an endless list of circumstances we have no control over. The game represents your response to the circumstances, of which you have 100% control. You can say yes, you can say no. You can go left, right, up, or down. This picture is one of the most powerful in Shackleton's story because it represents one of the most important things we all need to think about day to day. And so I'll ask you this question. Today, what is it that you have to let go of? Bad attitudes, anger, regret, jealousy. How many times, see if any of you can relate to this scenario. Let's say Angela and I are not getting along, okay? There's yelling, there's screaming. For those of you who've never seen this, this is called a fight. Okay, we're not getting along. And this little voice on the left side of my head says, hey, Mike, let it go. Just drop it. It's not a big deal. And of course, the competing voice on this side of my head says, yeah, but you're right. And of course, I'm like, okay, I've seen this movie too many times, so I decide to let it go. And all of a sudden, things work out. This picture is posted in my house on a 2 by 3 foot canvas. It's that important to me. So many things we have to let go of every single day. Now, people ask me all the time, Mike, can you send me a copy of this picture? Because I want to post it. I want to remember this. Every time you see this picture for the rest of your life, the question will ring in your mind, what is it that I have to let go of? So I'm going to make it easy for you. If you'd like a high-resolution digital image of that picture that you can blow up, you send a text message. You just text the word conquer. That's spelled without a K. You text it to the short code 33777. And when you do, it's going to ask you for an email address and a credit card number. No, I'm just kidding about the credit card. It'll ask you for an email address because that's where the file gets sent. And I thought, you know, the amount of things we all have to let go of every single day is endless. Now, I was so inspired, and the number of lessons from this story are endless. I mean, literally, there are dozens of lessons. We could stand here till midnight, literally, and not cover the same ones twice, and learn something from each of them that apply to our lives professionally and personally. So I was so inspired by this guy Shackleton, I thought, you know what? I want to walk in his shoes. So in February of 2005, a London, England-based company decided we're going to host a marathon. That's 26.2 miles. A run that's going to take place on an ice shelf 600 miles from the South Pole. Well, gee, what can possibly go wrong with this? So I signed up. I'll show you some pictures. It really is one of the most stunning places in the world. Now, of course, the question becomes this. How does a guy from San Diego, which is located in the state of California, by the way, not the country of Canada, how does a guy from San Diego get ready for a place called Antarctica? Well, that's real easy, especially when your wife doesn't want to relocate to Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, or Oymyakon, Siberia, the coldest inhabited town on Earth. You find a freezer. Now, this is where the story really becomes a cartoon, as if it's not already. And so I found this freezer, and I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, 59 feet at a time. Hey, dummy, they make something called a treadmill, and anybody can buy one. No, nothing digital or electric works at minus 22 degrees Fahrenheit. But this back and forth, and you're thinking, oh my God, this guy's a real screwball. And I was telling myself the same thing until I had a flashback to 1976, when one of my old hockey coaches, a guy named Ed, on a random Thursday night hockey practice in Allentown, Pennsylvania, said this to me, Mike, you will play the game the way you practice. Make the practice harder, the game goes easier. Skates away. 15-second encounter at best. Little did I know, 15 of the most important seconds of my whole life just showed up on a random Thursday night hockey practice in 1976 when I was 11 years old. Because if you think about it, this is really what Ed was telling me. Mike, look at difficulty differently. Most people see difficulty as an enemy. Maybe you should look at it as an ally. Most people run away from difficulty. Maybe you ought to run toward it. And little did I know, this paradigm shift would change everything for the rest of my life. Change my marriage, change my work, change my personal habits. Everything in my whole life would be different. Now, I trained in this freezer for like a year. So how do you run a marathon when you're in this place called Antarctica? The short answer to the question is not fast. In fact, I had a little help. You take penguin steps. I literally took this guy with me. He went inside the jacket pocket, and when it got hard, here's what he told me. Don't stop. Keep moving forward no matter what. Because keeping momentum you have is easier than generating momentum you don't have. Don't go fast. In fact, go slower. Just take penguin steps, little steps of progress. Anybody can take little steps. It's the discipline of consistency that gets somebody through an enduring event like a marathon. And it's true in enduring events in real life. Quitting smoking, losing weight, investing money. We all know what these events are in the everyday life. Taking little tiny steps of progress consistently is the answer. Angela has this printed on our refrigerator. It's been there for 20 years. That's why the paper is yellowing. Slow down, Mike. You'll get more things done. And I thought, boy, this is so true in the work world. People push and push and push to go fast and hard. That's not sustainable. But little tiny penguin steps are very sustainable. Every time you see one of these guys, you're going to think about the discipline of consistency and the importance of slowing down, and you'll actually get more things done. Shannon from Omaha, Nebraska, this is for you. Shannon is from one of my favorite places in the whole world. My favorite state out of all 50, for the record, is Iowa. There's a long story behind that. I won't go into that today. Why did I really go to Antarctica? I didn't know the answer to this question until December 24th, 2018. I mentioned it had something to do with Angela. Angela was in the hospital on this day, and as you can imagine, with an accident like hers, we've racked up a lot of frequent flyer miles in the hospital. And so she's in the hospital, and it's now 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Visiting hours are over. So I come home. It's Christmas Eve. There's nobody in the house. It's pitch black, and it's dead quiet. And I'm standing there, and I thought, when this episode is all over, is she coming home with or without me? For the first time in almost 30 years, I doubted whether she had ever walked through the door again, because it was pretty serious. Then I remembered my hero, Ernest Shackleton. I thought he must have faced moments like this during that 2-year period when they were stranded. Then I remembered something that Shackleton said when they returned. He said this: "We had seen God in his splendors. We heard the text that nature renders. We had reached the naked soul of man." And I thought, the naked soul of man? If that's not the best book title anybody's ever come up with, I don't know what is. What did he mean by that? That has to be the intersection where the very meaningful intersects the very difficult. The very meaningful intersects the very difficult. He must have had many of those moments when they were down there for 2 years, when he's in a very meaningful moment in his life. And difficulty is around him on every side, and there's very little he can do. How do you keep moving forward through that intersection when difficulty is all around you? I looked at the picture. He let go. So what if he was standing here in my house with me tonight on Christmas Eve? What would he say? Let Angela go. Hold on a minute. What do you mean, let Angela go? I've been with her for almost 30 years. Angela is the first and only real girlfriend of my entire life. Yes, I'm one of the lucky ones that won the lottery on one ticket. I can't let her go. Mike, it'll be okay. God promised you, you will never have more than you can handle. It'll be, no matter what happens, Mike, you'll be okay. All right, I trusted him. So standing there in the dark, I kind of let go of the balloon. The hardest and the most liberating decision of my whole life. And so you know the end of the story. She did come home in January, and if she was sitting here today, you may not know there was an incident. I mean, the running joke, it's a miracle. The running joke in my house, she's a three-headed cat. You know, they say cats have 9 lives. Well, I'm like, you've clearly been through more than 18. That's why we have the third head. And she can joke about it, right? But it really, and I thought, maybe this is why you went to Antarctica, Mike. Maybe the real reason you went to Antarctica is not to walk in the shoes of your hero or run a marathon on an ice shelf or live in a freezer for a year. Maybe the real reason you went was to learn to let go. And the way Angela and I live our life now is, everything is bonus time. That's how I see it. James and I were talking about this at dinner last night because his wife also has some health difficulties, and we were chatting about this idea of just letting things go and being grateful for what you've had, not ungrateful for what you haven't had. You see, it's the difficulties that make us stronger. The struggle makes us hunger. The hard lessons make the difference, and the difference makes it worth it. My name is Antarctic Mike. Thank you for your time and your attention this morning.